Xenix had witnessed countless demonstrations of strength throughout his 12 cycles as Chief Scientific Officer for the Galactic Council's Classification Committee. He had meticulously documented the pulverizing force of Jovian giants, the hydraulic might of Taurian cybernetics, and the artificial power of mechanid constructs. None of that prepared him for what a single human would do to the galaxy's most sophisticated strength measurement device. For now, he stood on the raised observation platform overlooking the vast desert basin of Goraxis, his elongated reptilian form silhouetted against the rising sun. His red eyes, with their vertical pupils, scanned the horizon where various ships descended through the atmosphere like metallic seeds falling to barren soil. Each vessel carried representatives from across the galaxy, all converging for the 47th Galactic Classification Cycle. Xenix's scaled skin glistened with a thin layer of protective oil he had applied earlier, a necessary precaution against the planet's dry heat. His two-limbed form was clad in the simple uniform of the Classification Committee, a synthetic fabric with multiple pockets containing measuring instruments, data pads, and calibration tools. Unlike most species, he possessed no neural implant. Rather, he used screens to keep track of his work. "Security detail reports all approaching vessels match registered delegations," came a rumbling voice beside him. Xenix turned to acknowledge Haddax, the security overseer for the proceedings. The squat, powerful being resembled what humans might call a rhinoceros, though Xenix had yet to encounter this Earth species in person. Haddax's thick, leathery hide featured plate-like protrusions along his spine and shoulders, natural armor that reflected his species' evolutionary history of territorial combat. Two primary eyes set wide apart beneath protective ridges gave him a perpetually skeptical expression, while his broad snout flared with each breath in the morning heat. "The Varaxians have arrived earlier than expected," Xenix noted, consulting his datapad. "That suggests they're confident in their enhancements this cycle." Haddax snorted, a sound that expressed both amusement and dismissal. "They were equally confident last cycle. Their cybernetics overheated during the endurance trials." "Evolution rewards adaptation, not merely power," Xenix replied, his voice dry and direct. Unlike many of his colleagues, he saw little value in softening his observations with unnecessary pleasantries. Unlike the barren desert to their left, the observation platform provided an optimal view of the proving grounds on the other side, a circular arrangement of testing stations surrounding a central arena. Rust-colored sands stretched to the horizon, broken by jutting rock formations that formed natural amphitheaters for the various trials. Canvas awnings stretched over smaller observation areas, providing minimal shade for officials and high-ranking representatives. Most impressive were the weathered stone monuments framing the central arena, massive obelisks and arches inscribed with mathematical formulas. These inscriptions, preserved for millennia, contained the first theoretical frameworks for faster-than-light travel, written by a species now forgotten to all but the oldest galactic records. "The 47th classification will be particularly significant," Xenix continued, more to himself than to Haddax. 17 species have advanced to higher technology tiers since the last assessment, potentially shifting resource allocation parameters across 3 sectors. Haddax made a dismissive gesture with one powerful arm. "Politicians and bureaucrats concern themselves with resources. I concern myself with which species might become emboldened by their new rankings." "A logical consideration," Xenix conceded. "Classification shifts have preceded 3 of the last 5 interstellar conflicts." As they spoke, Xenix methodically checked the calibration equipment that would ensure standardized measurements across all testing stations. The entire process was designed to be scrupulously fair. The planet's slightly lower than average gravity, 0.8 standard, carefully chosen to provide no particular species with a significant advantage.
The monuments appear to have weathered another cycle intact,
Xenix observed, indicating the ancient stone structures with a slight nod.
An appropriate reminder of what should be preserved.
Haddax grunted, his attention already shifting to a potential security concern among newly arrived delegates instead of the scenery.
If you're finished with your philosophical observations, we should begin our inspection tour. The Veraxian delegation is ready for their preliminary assessment.
Without waiting for a response, Haddax began moving toward the spiral pathway that would take them down from the platform into the main testing complex. Xenix followed, his movements fluid and measured despite having only 2 limbs to manage both balance and locomotion. As they descended, Xenix activated his portable surveillance equipment, allowing them to observe the Veraxian delegation without directly approaching. The display projected a 3-dimensional image of the Veraxian preparation area, where furred beings with advanced cybernetic enhancements were making final adjustments to their champion's exoskeleton.
Power distribution nodes appear to have been redesigned,
Xenix noted, zooming the image to focus on particular components.
Hydraulic amplification systems show significant miniaturization compared to previous cycles. Will it prevent overheating this time?
Haddax asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer.
Doubtful. I calculate a 64% probability of similar failure under sustained testing conditions.
The Veraxian champion, a heavily augmented individual whose natural form was almost entirely obscured by mechanical components, was undergoing a calibration sequence. The exoskeleton vibrated with power as the being lifted a test weight that would have challenged even Haddax's natural strength.
Impressive for short-duration application,
Xenix acknowledged.
But the thermal management system remains inadequate for metabolic waste heat.
They moved on, using their surveillance equipment to next observe the Draconian Confederation's preparation area. Unlike the Veraxians with their external enhancements, the Draconians had taken a biological approach to strength optimization. Their champion, a massive reptilian being with genetically engineered muscle density, casually bent a metal alloy bar as part of a warm-up routine.
The Draconians have maintained consistency across 4 classification cycles,
Xenix observed.
Their genetic approach shows remarkable stability. And predictability,
Haddax added.
Which makes them less concerning from a security perspective than species experiencing rapid technological leaps.
As they continued their remote inspection tour, Xenix's datapad emitted a notification tone. He checked the display, his vertical pupils contracting slightly, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow in many humanoid species.
Interesting. A new delegation has arrived and completed registration. Humans from Earth, participating in their first classification cycle.
Haddax turned his broad head towards Xenix.
Earth? The isolated system in Sector 11? Correct. First contact was established 2.7 standard years ago. This marks their formal introduction to the classification system.
With a few dexterous manipulations, Xenix redirected their surveillance equipment to observe the registration area. The display showed 5 humans in simple, functional clothing that appeared primitive by Galactic standards. They wore no visible enhancements and carried minimal equipment.
Unremarkable,
Haddax declared after a brief assessment.
Small stature, no natural armor, no apparent specialized adaptations. Preliminary biological data shows some unusual properties,
Xenix countered, scrolling through the limited information available.
Muscle fiber composition shows higher density than expected for their mass. Neural response times register at the upper end of the baseline range.
Theory rarely survives contact with empirical testing, Haddock said dismissively. The surveillance feed showed a human male approaching the registration official. He was physically unimposing by galactic standards, but carried himself with a disciplined bearing. Captain Marcus, Earth United Defense. We talked before? The human introduced himself, the translation coming through clearly on their surveillance feed. The registration official noted the human's lack of enhancement technology. Will your representative be competing in unmodified classification? Most species with your apparent technological development utilize at least basic exoskeletal assistance. The human called Marcus responded with what Xenix recognized as a smile, a facial expression signaling either amusement or social bonding among certain species. We prefer to establish our natural baseline first, Marcus explained. It provides better data for future enhancement design.
A scientifically sound approach, Xenix commented. Though outdated by current galactic standards, most species integrate enhancement for the earliest classification stages.
Haddax made a gesture of dismissal.
Assign them low-priority testing slot, he instructed the staff via remote communication. After the established delegations have completed their assessments.
Through the surveillance feed, they observed the humans accept this without complaint, which seemed to puzzle Haddax.
No objection. Most new species protest such a placement. Perhaps they lack understanding of pride,
Xenix suggested, though something in the humans' demeanor suggested otherwise. Their inspection tour continued to the Mechanid delegation, where a fully synthetic species presented their champion, a towering construct of advanced alloys. The Mechanids considered themselves the pinnacle of evolutionary development, having abandoned biological constraints entirely in favor of design perfection. As Xenix and Haddax observed the impressive technological display, a notification indicated that the first competitors were being called forward. The official testing was about to commence.
We should check the warrior personally, Xenix suggested. They always love it when we show up for a surprise inspection.
Haddax agreed with a nod, and Xenix found his attention returning briefly to the surveillance feed showing the human delegation. They stood quietly observing the proceedings, their expressions revealing nothing of what might come later. Something about their calm demeanor triggered Xenix's curiosity, a rare occurrence after so many classification cycles of predictable results. The testing would officially start with established species performing the tests first. The numbers would be analyzed, the rankings adjusted, and the galactic hierarchy would maintain its familiar structure. Or so everyone assumed. No one, least of all Xenix, anticipated that by day's end, a species from an isolated planet called Earth would force a fundamental reconsideration of the entire classification system. Several hours into the testing process, Xenix's datapad vibrated with a notification that the human delegation would be tested shortly. Most officials had dismissed this schedule point as inconsequential, but something about the humans' confidence had lodged in Xenix's analytical mind. A species' first classification often revealed evolutionary adaptations that defied standard predictive models.
I propose we observe the human testing directly,
Xenix suggested to Haddax, who was monitoring security feeds showing the Jovian representatives' impressive, though entirely expected, performance.
The unenhanced primitives,
Haddax's protective eye ridges rose slightly,
hardly seems worth the journey. Scientific thoroughness requires direct observation of anomalous variables,
Xenix replied. When Haddax's expression remained skeptical, he added,
At minimum, it will provide a break from the statistical predictability of established species' performances.
Haddax relented with a dismissive grunt, and they began their path through the corridors of the protected administrative area. As they approached one of the testing chambers, Xenix noted the human delegation waiting near the entrance, their relaxed demeanor contrasting sharply with the tense anticipation typically displayed by new species. The strength testing chamber was a massive circular structure carved directly into the sandstone cliff face. Unlike the exposed areas of the proving grounds, the chamber's thick walls maintained a slightly cooler temperature. Though still uncomfortably dry by most species' standards, natural light filtered through ceiling apertures, illuminating the central platform where the kinetic impact analyzer, known colloquially as the KIA, stood ready for the next competitor. The KIA resembled a reinforced metallic pillar, approximately 2 meters tall with a circular striking pad positioned at chest height for the average galactic species. The pad itself was composed of a dark composite material specifically designed to absorb kinetic energy without visible deformation, while concentric rings of sensors surrounding it glowed with soft blue light. The machine's base extended into the platform itself, anchored by massive support structures to prevent movement even under extreme testing conditions. As Xenix and Haddax entered, a Taurian competitor with extensive cybernetic enhancements was just departing. The display screen still showed his impressive score, currently the highest of the day. Xenix noticed with interest that the human delegation appeared completely unimpressed by the number. Their arrival caused a noticeable stir among the gathered officials. The presence of the chief scientific officer at what should have been a routine assessment of a newly contacted species drew curious glances and murmured speculation.
"Is there something special about these humans?"
The draconian scientific attaché approached Xenix, mandibles clicking with barely concealed interests.
I merely maintain comprehensive data collection standards for all species,
Xenix replied, his tone neutral despite his growing scientific curiosity. More officials began to gather, drawn by the unusual attention. The Vrexian delegation made deliberately audible comments about primitive species wasting assessment time. Their cybernetically enhanced hearing certainly detected that the humans could hear them. The human delegation consisted of 5 individuals, 4 males and 1 female by their dimorphic characteristics. Their leader, whom Xenix had identified earlier as Captain Marcus, stood slightly apart from the others, observing the proceedings with military discipline. Beside him was a smaller male in what appeared to be a scientific role, consulting a primitive data device. 2 security personnel positioned themselves at the group's perimeter, while the female appeared to be a diplomatic representative, her attention focused on the gathering officials rather than the testing apparatus. As technicians performed the standard recalibration of the KIA, Xenix observed the humans asking surprisingly technical questions about the measurement methodology. The scientific male took particular interest in the energy absorption capabilities of the striking pad, asking about material composition with terminology that suggested greater technological understanding than their equipment implied.
They're creating a misleading impression of technological naivety,
Xenix noted quietly to Haddax.
Their questions reveal some familiarity with advanced physics concepts.
"Strategic deception of cultural peculiarity?"
Haddax responded, his security training immediately seeking motivation.
Insufficient data for conclusion,
Xenix admitted. The chamber was now filled with spectators, creating an unexpectedly large audience for what should have been a minor test. Representatives from at least 12 species lined the viewing areas, their attention focused on the human delegation with expressions ranging from curiosity to dismissive amusement. The captain stepped forward as the technicians completed their calibration. We present James Morrison, Human Unmodified Division, for strength assessment. The human who stepped onto the testing platform was larger than his companions, approximately 1.9 meters tall with a heavily muscled physique. Unlike the cybernetically enhanced or genetically modified competitors before him, James wore simple athletic clothing that covered most of his body but revealed powerfully developed arms. Despite his impressive build, he appeared smaller than most previous competitors, particularly in comparison to the massive Jovians or the armored Draconians. Preliminary mass assessment, 104 kilograms, announced the testing official. Subject classified as unmodified baseline according to provided biological parameters. A ripple of dismissive commentary spread through the watching species. A mechanid representative loudly calculated that based on visible muscle mass alone, the human would achieve a fraction of the current high score. James ignored the commentary completely, focusing on a series of stretching movements that Xenix recognized as methodical preparation. His face revealed nothing, neither anxiety nor bravado, as he listened to the testing official explain the procedure. "You will have 3 attempts," the official stated, indicating the striking pad. "Your highest score will be recorded for classification purposes. You may begin when ready, following the commencement signal." Xenix activated his personal scanning equipment, intent on capturing complete biometric data during the test. To his surprise, James's heart rate and respiration remained remarkably steady for a first-time competitor facing galactic scrutiny.
His readings suggest either exceptional emotional control or complete confidence,
Xenix murmured to Hadax. The security officer's wide-set eyes narrowed slightly.
"The latter would be concerning."
As James approached the KIA, the chamber grew quieter, the crowd anticipating a brief and unremarkable demonstration. He took position before the machine, studying it with focused attention. After a moment, he rolled his shoulders and flexed his hands, settling into a balanced stance that Xenix noted distributed his weight optimally for force generation. The commencement tones sounded, and James took a deep breath. Xenix observed the perfect coordination of muscle groups as the human's weight shifted, torso rotating and arm extending in textbook kinetic chain utilization. The movement appeared almost leisurely compared to the explosive techniques employed by species like the Draconians. Yet, something about the motion caught Xenix's attention. Contact with the pad produced a sharp, cracking sound that echoed through the chamber, distinctively different from the dull thuds or metallic impacts of previous competitors. The indicator lights on the KIA raced upward with startling speed, flashing through green and yellow into red zones that few competitors had reached. For a brief moment, several purple lights activated near the top before the reading stabilized. A processing delay followed as the KIA calibrated the final reading. Xenix leaned forward, his vertical pupils dilating with scientific interest. The main display screen illuminated with the force reading, showing a value that exceeded the Taurian's previous high score by 12.7%. A moment of shocked silence engulfed the chamber. The Taurian delegation erupted first.
"Equipment malfunction,"
bellowed their scientific officer, jowls quivering with indignation.
"The primitive cannot have exceeded our enhanced champion." "Scan the human for hidden technology,"
demanded a Vrexian representative, stalking toward James with scanning equipment already activated. Xenix moved quickly to the KIA's calibration panel, verifying that all systems were functioning within normal parameters. The data was clear. The unenhanced human had generated impact force exceeding that of cybernetically augmented species with centuries of enhancement development. Chaos spread through the chamber as multiple delegations began shouting allegations and demands. Several representatives surrounded the human team, gesturing aggressively and calling for immediate disqualification. Captain Marcos maintained remarkable composure, attempting to address the questions rationally. James himself stood quietly by the KIA, appearing neither surprised nor boastful about his performance. His expression remained neutral as he watched the uproar his simple demonstration had caused. Haddax moved to establish a security perimeter around the humans as tension escalated. The Mechanid delegation had begun scanning James with unauthorized equipment, searching for technological signatures that might explain the unexpected result.
Order!
Haddax's powerful voice cut through the chaos momentarily.
Stand back from the testing subject or face security protocol enforcement.
Xenix completed his verification and addressed the chamber.
The equipment is functioning within all calibration parameters. The reading stands as valid.
The announcement only intensified the controversy. The Draconian representative suggested the humans must have stolen enhancement technology from an unregistered species. The Vrexians accused them of molecular-level modifications, undetectable by standard scanning. Even the normally reserved Jovian delegation joined the accusations, their massive representative suggesting gravitational manipulation devices. "We request molecular scanning and complete biometric analysis." Captain Marcus's voice somehow cut through the cacophony. "We welcome full verification of our unmodified status." His calm acceptance of scrutiny momentarily silenced the accusations. Xenix activated the chamber's emergency protocols, temporarily locking down the exits, while Haddax coordinated with security forces to separate the most aggressive accusers from the human delegation.
A full scientific investigation will be conducted immediately,
Xenix announced, his authority as chief scientific officer finally beginning to restore order.
The central platform will be cleared of all except testing officials and the human subject.
As security formed a protective cordon around the human delegation, Xenix personally inspected the KIA, verifying its accuracy with redundant systems. A specialized medical team was brought in to scan James for enhancements, their equipment far more sensitive than the standard testing protocols. The preliminary results only deepened the mystery. "No evidence of cybernetic enhancement," reported the lead medical officer, a Thalaxian with specialized training in cross-species biology. "Musculature is entirely organic, though notably dense in structure. Neural conductivity reads high, but within natural parameters." This finding increased the skepticism among the watching species rather than elevating it. If technology wasn't responsible for the human's performance, then some other explanation must exist, one that potentially threatened the established hierarchy of species capabilities. As scanning continued, representatives from multiple galactic powers confronted Captain Marcos, who had been allowed to remain with James during the investigation.
Your species must have had contact with advanced civilizations before official galactic integration,
insisted the Vrexian scientific officer, his cybernetic eyes whirring as they adjusted focus.
Such physical capability does not evolve naturally.
The human might have gained access to primordial enhancement technology. Some ancient species can work miracles, added the Mechanid representative, its synthesized voice modulating with suspicion. Marcos maintained his composure, addressing each accusation with patience that Xenix found remarkable given the hostile environment. "Earth developed in relative isolation," he explained. "Our planet's gravity is approximately 1.7 galactic standard, and our evolutionary history involved continuous adaptation to predatory threats and environmental challenges."
"Many species evolved under similar or more extreme conditions,"
countered the Draconian.
"None display such disproportionate strength relative to mass."
The confrontation continued as the medical team completed their comprehensive analysis. Xenix reviewed the final results, finding himself fascinated by the implications. James showed no signs of artificial enhancement whatsoever. His strength appeared to be entirely natural, the result of evolutionary pathways unlike any the galactic community had previously encountered. When Xenix announced these conclusive findings, the controversy intensified rather than resolving. If humans were naturally this strong, what did that imply for galactic security and species hierarchy? Amid the growing hostility, the human captain raised his hand, somehow commanding attention despite the charged atmosphere. "We anticipated your concerns," he stated calmly, "which is why we brought both unmodified and cybernetically enhanced representatives. What you've witnessed is baseline human capability. If the committee permits, we would like to demonstrate our enhanced division." This statement sent shockwaves through the gathered officials. Xenix felt his insides churn. If an unenhanced human could achieve the day's highest score, what might an enhanced specimen be capable of? Marcos signalled to the human delegation, and they parted to reveal another figure who had remained in the background until now. The enhanced human stepped forward, a tall soldier with the name Stanley Kovacs displayed on his uniform. Unlike James's natural appearance, Stanley's enhancements were immediately visible. His arms were fully cybernetic from shoulder to fingertips, gleaming with metallic components that appeared more elegant and integrated than the often strange augmentations of other species. Neural interface nodes were visible at his temples and the base of his skull, glowing with subtle blue light that blinked in rhythm with his heartbeat. His movements displayed a fluid, almost regal grace enhanced by a bulky robotic body. The crowd fell silent at the sight of human cybernetic technology, so different from other species' approaches. Xenix studied the integration of biological and mechanical systems, noting the elegant steps that suggested a fundamentally different design philosophy. Something in Stanley's bearing triggered Haddax's combat instincts. The security officer shifted his stance subtly, massive form tensing as if preparing for threat response. "Stanley represents humanity's first-generation enhancement program," Marcos explained, his words carrying clearly in the silent chamber. "He demonstrates the initial integration of our technological and biological development paths." The emphasis on first generation was unmistakable, an implication that humans were only beginning their technological evolution. Xenix and Haddax exchanged concerned glances, both sensing that something unprecedented was about to occur. After a moment of tense consideration, the chamber master announced,
"The enhanced human representative will be permitted to perform the strength assessment under maximum security protocols." Stanley approached the KIA with measured steps, the crowd's attention fixed on him with a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and, from some species, unmistakable fear. His cybernetic arm emitted a barely audible sound as systems engaged. The advanced technology clearly more sophisticated than the partially integrated exoskeletons used by the Vrexians, or the brute force hydraulics of other enhanced species. As he took position before the strength testing machine, his eyes fixed on the target with cold intensity. Xenix found himself experiencing an unexpected emotion, one rarely felt by his analytically minded species, anticipation tinged with apprehension. The testing official hesitated before stepping back to a safe distance, then initiated the commencement sequence. Stanley shifted his weight, cybernetic systems visibly powering up along his arm as the countdown began. In that moment, Xenix had the distinct impression that the galactic classification system, and, perhaps much more, was about to take a direct hit. The countdown reached 0. A tone signaled that Stanley could proceed. In the instant that followed, Xenix's highly evolved visual processing struggled to track the human's movement. Stanley's form became a blur as he launched forward.
his body moving with acceleration that defied Xenix's understanding of unassisted biomechanics. The cybernetic arm extended directly, the artificial musculature working in seamless harmony with the human's natural systems. The enhanced fist connected with the striking pad. A deafening crack, fundamentally different from any previous impact, echoed through the chamber. Xenix's instruments registered the initial force spike before emergency cutoffs engaged to protect the sensitive equipment. Useless. The striking pad instantly crumpled inward. The anchor screws securing the KIA to the platform snapped in rapid succession, the sound of shearing metal adding to the cacophony. The entire device, a machine that had remained immovable through countless tests, ripped free from its foundation and toppled backward, tumbling across the platform before exploding against the far wall in a shower of components and fragments. The main display screen flickered, attempting to process a reading before shorting out completely in a flash. Stanley stood perfectly still, cybernetic arm extended in the follow-through position, his expression unchanged. In front of him, the KIA, a device that had withstood the might of the galaxy's strongest beings for decades, lay in ruins. Absolute silence gripped the chamber. No species moved, no official spoke. For several seconds, the only sound was the crackling of electrical discharges from the destroyed equipment. Xenix stared in disbelief, his recording devices continuing to capture data even as his mind struggled to process what he'd witnessed. Beside him, Haddax had instinctively shifted into a defensive posture, his massive form angled to provide maximum protection against a potential threat. The silence broke as officials from the nearest viewing areas retreated in visible alarm, creating a buffer zone around the human delegation. The chamber master remained frozen, formal announcement protocol rendered meaningless by the unprecedented destruction of the testing apparatus itself. Technical staff cautiously approached the wreckage, confirming what was already visually apparent: complete system failure. Nothing remained of the KIA but scattered components and structural fragments, some embedded in the chamber's stone walls from the force of the impact. Captain Marcos stepped forward, positioning himself beside Stanley, and lit up a cigarette, something incredibly weird by Xenix's standards. James, the unenhanced human, whose performance had already shocked the galactic community, stood nearby, looking entirely unsurprised, reinforcing Xenix's growing suspicion that the humans had perfectly anticipated this outcome.
"What manner of technology is this?"
demanded the draconian representative, mandibles clicking in agitation.
"No known enhancement system contains such destructive potential in a form factor of that size."
A Mechanid official approached the wreckage, scanning it with analytical instruments.
"It's gone,"
its synthesized voice announced, the normally monotone delivery carrying unusual modulation that Xenix recognized as the synthetic equivalent of alarm. Stanley exchanged a glance with Captain Marcos, who gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. The enhanced human remained silent, his discipline matching that of his unenhanced counterpart. Xenix found his curiosity overriding caution as he approached the humans.
"Your integration of biological and mechanical systems is impressive,"
he observed, scanning instruments directly towards Stanley's cybernetic components.
"The power ratio exceeds our best standards by a significant margin."
Haddax maintained security presence, his attention now divided between protecting the humans from the increasingly agitated officials and, Xenix noted with interest, protecting the officials from the humans.
"Emergency council session,"
announced the chief assessor, activating the chamber's protocol override.
"All non-essential personnel clear the testing area immediately."
Within minutes, the high-ranking representatives from each major species had convened directly in the chamber, forming a semicircle before the human delegation. Security forces established a perimeter. though Xenix observed they maintain significantly greater distance from the humans than protocol dictated.
Chief Scientific Officer, your assessment,
demanded the Council Overseer. Xenix stepped forward, presenting the data with characteristic precision.
Preliminary analysis suggests that the enhanced human's impact force exceeded previous galactic records by a minimum of 400%. Complete measurement was impossible due to testing equipment failure.
Murmurs spread through the gathered officials. The implications extended far beyond a simple strength classification. They suggested humanity possessed technological capabilities that could potentially upset the carefully maintained balance of power within the galaxy.
The integration of biological and mechanical systems is more than just impressive,
Xenix said. Haddax joined the assessment with security implications.
Recommend immediate classification review and security protocols regarding human species.
The Council Overseer gestured for Captain Marcos to address the gathered officials. The human stepped forwards with the same calm composure he had maintained throughout the chaos. Earth evolved in relative isolation, he explained, his voice steady and diplomatic. We need to be strong to survive there. This simple. What you've witnessed today is the result of parallel development paths. While some species replaced physical capability with technology, humans integrated the two. You claim this level of enhancement is common among your species? Asked the Mechanid representative, its analytical systems visibly processing new threat assessment. Marcus's response was short. Stanley represents our first-generation integration program. More recent developments remain in preliminary testing phases. The implications sent a visible ripple through the galactic representatives. Xenix found the scientific possibilities fascinating. While recognizing the political and security ramifications that would inevitably follow, a newly contacted species with both exceptional natural strength and unprecedented enhancement technology would fundamentally alter galactic calculations of power and influence. After extensive deliberation, the Council's chief assessor formally acknowledged humanity's exceptional strength rating, though with visible reluctance.
The classification will be recorded, he stated, with appropriate notation regarding measurement limitations.
The Vrexian representative objected immediately.
This establishes a dangerous precedent. If their baseline already exceeds established parameters, their enhanced capabilities cannot be properly classified within the existing system.
Perhaps,
Xenix suggested, curiosity overriding political considerations.
The system itself requires expansion to accommodate new evolutionary pathways we hadn't previously encountered.
1 month later, in his private office on his homeworld, Xenix reviewed the aftermath of what galactic media had termed the human demonstration. Various species had reacted precisely as he had predicted in his report to the Council. Warrior cultures had already extended alliance offers to Earth, recognizing the military advantages of human strength capabilities. Technologically superior species had initiated comprehensive reassessments of their defensive systems. Genetically modified species had submitted formal requests for access to human genetic material for study. Most telling, synthetic species like the Mechanids had begun immediate recalculation of threat assessments, their previous confidence in technological superiority visibly shaken. A notification from Haddax appeared on Xenix's communication panel. The message was brief but encapsulated the security officer's concerns.
The galaxy is unprepared for humanity. What can we do?
Xenix considered this assessment as he studied the visual recording of the testing chamber destruction once more. Xenix closed the file and composed his response to Haddax.
I am not certain, But scientific cooperation is preferable to confrontation.
As he transmitted the message, Xenix reflected on humanity's new role in the galactic stage. Perhaps humans, rather than newcomers, represented something the current galactic powers were ill-prepared to confront, a species that was naturally strong, but also could enhance themselves better than others. If Xenix's assessment was correct, humanity's presence would reshape galactic civilization for cycles to come, and all they could do was hope it would be for the best.